Hello, BookTube. You'd be very proud of me. I remembered at the last minute to open some mail on camera. I have a little mail for you. I fell out of the habit of doing that, and have not completely picked the habit up again. But I've got a little bit of mail here. A couple of things that from this morning that I opened, but that we can still look at and talk about, and then some packages that we can open together. Very overcast, raw day. Sorry about the dodgy lighting. I'm sure there's watery lighting here. It's not bitterly cold anymore, but all day long it has been threatening snow, that metallic feeling that you get when snow is in the offing. I didn't want to believe it. I've been looking at the same data that the forecasters have, and I've just thought, now we're going to get rain. It's not cold enough for snow. But I don't know. The feeling in the air here, the feeling on the walks that I've had with Frida today it's been a feeling of snow. So it's just heavy there. And also, for what it's worth, my sparrows are extremely acquisitive today. I mean, they're stressed a little anyway because there's still a small little mantle of snow, fifth of an inch on the ground, and the ground is still hard and cold, so they're finding it hard to forage for food. Not that they forage much anyway, they pretty much live on me. But I've noticed over the years that they get a little antsier when weather is coming. That might preclude them from hunting at all, from getting food at all. So I think weather is coming. It's just held off all day. Probably it will be catalyzed by the change of the sun going down. Probably that will do it. But anyway, so I might be complaining about snow tomorrow, but I don't think so. Whatever it is, I don't think it will last. So let's look at the mail we've got here. I've got a couple of interesting things to look at that are already open. One is something that we've already seen. We saw the advanced copy. Now I'm getting the finished copy. And this is by Mixin Pei, and it's called The Sentinel State, Surveillance and the Survival of Dictatorship in China. How's that for a cover? Huh? That is just amazing. This is coming out in the middle of the month. This is the finished copy. For all of you people who like to read about contemporary China, I've been doing a lot of reading about China in the last 2 weeks. A huge amount. Not contemporary, but it's edging into contemporary. So this is a deep interest to me. Or is this? No, this is February. This comes out in mid-February, not mid-January. I don't think I'm getting any January books. For decades, China watchers argued that economic liberalization and increasing prosperity would bring democracy to the world's most populous country. I never argued that. There's only one way to get rid of autocracy, and it's not with cheaper bread. Instead, the Communist Party's grip on power has only strengthened. Why? In answer, the answer, the author argues, lies in the effectiveness of the Chinese surveillance state. And the source of that effectiveness is not just advanced technology like facial recognition, AI, mobile phone tracking. These are important, but what matters is China's vast, labor-intensive infrastructure of domestic spying. Central government data on Chinese surveillance is confidential, so the author turned to local reports, police gazettes, leaked documents, and interviews with exiled dissidents to provide a detailed look at the evolution, organization, and tactics of the surveillance state. Fascinating stuff. Dangerous work to do, legwork to do in China, that's for sure. I don't know if this research was done in China, but that's the sort of thing that will get you arrested and tortured. Following the 1989 Tiananmen Square uprising, the Chinese Communist Party invested immense resources in a coercive apparatus operated by a relatively small number of secret police officers capable of mobilizing millions of citizen informants to spy on those suspected of disloyalty. The CCP's Leninist bureaucratic structure, whereby officials and party activists penetrate every sector of society and the economy, from universities to village committees to delivery companies, telecommunication firms, and Tibetan monasteries, ensures that Beijing's eyes and ears are truly everywhere. And you notice what's going on there. You notice what's being described there. You're getting, yes, you have all those agents, but those agents are the tip of the iceberg. The huge amount of this surveillance work is being done by ordinary people who it is hurting. They're doing it anyway. Because they can get a fraction of a hint of an advantage for their children by doing it, well, then they'll do it. They're dedicated, loving parents. They'll do it if they have to. If they can buy off just a tiny bit of trouble, push it a little bit down the road, they'll do it. In case you're wondering what the future of America looks like, you get a knock at the door. There's a police cruiser outside. There's not an FBI sedan outside. There's nothing federal outside. There's a police cruiser from the precinct 10 blocks over. And 2 officers are at the door. and you want to know what's wrong, and they say, well, there are flags, there are signs. They say Trump won. It's now official policy that Trump won the 2020 election. Your flag's nowhere. It's not in any of your windows. You don't have something on your lawn. You might want to, go to Walmart, get one, and put it there. And if those cops say, look, we don't want to run you in. We have unlimited indemnity now. We could beat the crap out of you. We could kill you in the precinct house. And you've got a wife and kids. We know because we watch. You've got a wife and kids. Is it really that big a deal? You go, you spend $25 on the flag, you put it on your lawn. Is it really that big a deal? Is it really, in the phrase that is favored by fascists everywhere, including retail managers, who I'm sure you've heard it from, is this really the hill to die on? You're going to say, no, it's not. I'm sorry, I'll go and do it right away. And the reason why they're at your door is because your neighbor tipped them off. To ease the eye's gaze on him just a tiny bit, even a little bit for his own family. And not only will you go to Walmart and get that flag, that Trump won flag, but when you see the police cruiser slowing down outside your house, you know the flag is out there, you know they can see it, but they now know you didn't have it. You don't like that. You don't like that cloud over you. When that happens, you're going to look for the neighbor who doesn't have that flag, and you're going to call the anonymous number. And that's exactly this. That there aren't enough bureaucratic spies by a factor of 1,000 to do what needs to be done. China's immense. I haven't read this yet. I have the advanced copy. I haven't actually cracked it yet. I really should, but I'm having such a ball paying so much close attention to January books that I haven't really ventured far into February. Not much. I will. I will this weekend. Then we have this next book, which is indie published. I want to show it to you anyway. I get a lot of these in the mail. I don't often show them to people, and I thought some of you might be interested, especially you Christians. This is by Baruch Binyamin. So with a name like that, I should say Judeo-Christian. I doubt very much that Baruch Binyamin is a Christian. He's probably a Jew, and there are Jewish people who listen to me who cleave to the faith. And this is a faith book. It's a well-designed thing. It's a pretty trade paperback that will be. Are you going to tell me how much you are? No. All right. Well, it doesn't matter. It's a trade paperback. You won't see it in a bookstore anyway. You'd have to order it. But for some of you, this is going to be a bullseye. This is the Old Testament 12-step workbook. An oversized thing. Lovely, lovely design there. It's oversized because it's very interactive. You've got, with workbooks like this, you've always got space where you can journal on your own. Every chapter has something like that. Of course, the writers and the setup people for books like this know perfectly well that you have paper of your own. But the thing is to have it all in one book, where you help to construct your own resource. And this is about addiction. It's about addiction and recovery, using the Old Testament to help with addiction and recovery. Let's read the back here. This 12-step addiction recovery workbook, written by a Jewish alcoholic who lived 22 years of sobriety. Okay, so I was wrong. It's not for Christians. Although Christians will work a lot. This will work for them as well. Taps into the divine life lessons contained in the Old Testament of the Bible. Its biblical wisdom will be helpful for recovering alcoholics and addicts from all religious backgrounds, however. Offering a 90-day program of recovery that spans all 5 books of the Old Testament, this workbook shares a daily biblical verse coupled with insights and comments that will enable the recovering alcoholic and addict to form a closer connection with his or her higher power. Very much using the Alcoholics Anonymous language there. I should point out that in Baruch's personal tradition, you don't get to pick and choose higher powers. You have a higher power already, and he's unbelievably touchy on that particular point. But you get the point here. Is that we're trying to make this applicable to lots of people. For each day, this workbook also asks questions and suggests journaling exercises that help the reader work the 12 steps with greater spiritual awareness. So there you go. This is probably out already. This is probably available. And it's going to touch a nerve with a lot of people. A lot of people, when they're facing substance abuse issues, turn to the faith of their childhood, the faith of their youth. I've known a lot of people like that. I know right now probably half a dozen people who are sober and will tell me without batting an eye that without their religion they couldn't have done it. Now, I might privately think, no, you don't have any idea how strong you are. You could have done this without that. But for them, it's absolutely real. For them, it saved their life. And this is an exponent of that. So I wanted to make sure to show it to you. And then we have the packages that we can open here on camera. As I'm losing the light is failing as I'm sitting here because whatever's coming is going to strike, clearly going to strike at sunset, and we're minutes away from sunset. So let's see what this first one is. Oh, okay, great. All right, we've already seen this. We saw the advanced copy of this. What is all this material? Okay, well, this is the finished copy of the book that we've already seen. This is by Nathan Pearl Rosenthal, and it is called The Age of Revolutions and the Generations Who Made It, from Basic Books, which is having an incredible run when it comes to history and biography. Just incredible. They can do no wrong. It's like they had some sort of personnel change, or maybe they just got lucky with submissions. So this comes out at the end of February. And let's see here. What do we have? At the turn of the 19th century, two waves of revolutions swept the Atlantic world, disrupting the social order and ushering in a new democratic republican experiment whose effects rippled across the continents and centuries. The first wave of revolutions in the late 1700s, which included the much celebrated American and French revolutions and the revolt against slavery in Haiti, succeeded in disrupting existing political structures. But it wasn't until the second wave of revolutionaries came to maturity in the early 1800s, imbued with a passion for social mobility and a knack for political organizing, that these new forms of political life took durable shape, from the states of independent Haiti and Spanish America to the pre-revolutionary governments that arose during and after Napoleon's long reign over early 19th century Europe. And this is a study of those two waves of revolutions. I think that's terrific, absolutely terrific. It's a little bit melancholy. America is a very old working democracy. That is not a usual thing. You don't usually get that in human history. And that's going to make it melancholy going into 2025. It's going to make it melancholy to read about these things, because if you have an autocracy to overthrow, if you want to break away and be free in a relatively participatory democracy, you can't ever do that by petition. That doesn't ever happen except violently. It doesn't ever happen except by revolution. And revolutions are bloody and they can be lost. So this is going to be a little bit melancholy, but nevertheless, we have a picture of the author, who is exceedingly young. So shall we read his biography? He's an associate professor of history at the University of Southern California. And his writing has appeared in the Wall Street Journal, the Atlantic, the Nation, and the LA Times. And he is the author of Citizen Sailors, which I think I read. But this is another perfect example. Like the Sentinel State, this comes out in February, and I really need to start paying attention to February releases. I really do. But we'll move on here. We've got a couple more packages to do. That's great. A work of history. That's wonderful. Actually, two works of history. We're counting the Sentinel State. Let's move on to this next one here. Okay, this next one comes out in May. So, a long time from now, don't need to worry about this. This is not crowding my February plate. Oh, great. Oh, fantastic. Wonderful. Also from Basic Books. What a streak they're on. This is by Lloyd Llewellyn Jones, and it's called The Cleopatras, The Forgotten Queens of Egypt. How's that for a cover design, even? The infamous Cleopatra has been the recipient of nearly every superlative and stereotype. Historians, artists, and writers alike have depicted her as a victim, a femme fatale, a temptress, a feminist, and more. But the Cleopatra we think we know was actually the seventh Queen Cleopatra in a long line of powerful women rulers. And their complicated, nuanced stories reshape our understanding of female leadership in antiquity. The author is a leading expert on the ancient world, and he introduces those 7 dynamic women in this book. Spanning a century and a half, the 7 queens named Cleopatra challenged the patriarchal norms of their time and reigned during the golden age for royal women. While each Cleopatra faced her own unique circumstances and utilized different tactics to preserve her power, all 7 monarchs strengthened the role of the queen in Egypt, often to the detriment of the kings of the Ptolemaic dynasty. The author confronts our misconceptions of the ancient world as inhabited by nameless, faceless women, and instead gives a voice to those forgotten queens, the first group of women in history to align themselves with political power. Okay, all right. Although their collective story has been largely ignored, The Cleopatras is the first book to bring together the lives of all 7 Cleopatras, showing how royal women could change the norms of male-dominated institutions and rewrite history. And this book, this author, Lloyd Llewellyn Jones, is an author of a book called The Persians, which was really good. So that's great. That business about the first group of women in history to align themselves with political power would be a bit of a shock to Nefertiti, but it doesn't matter. It isn't true. It isn't true even just in Egypt, but it isn't true outside of Egypt either. But that could be cover copy, right? That's a pub sheet. That need not be the book. And the author has immense credit in the Bank of Steve because The Persians was really good. Hoping that I can maybe sweet talk the folks at Basic Books into a paperback of The Persians. That would be nice. I'm sure it's lovely. I'll have to get on the emails to them and see what might be about. But anyway, there we go. We're doing fine for this mail haul. Absolutely. We'll finish up with this last one here. Let me get this thing out of the way. That's a May release, so that goes on the May shelf, but I don't need to worry about it. Oh, okay, great. All right, this is all Basic Books. Fantastic. All right, so this is another finished copy of a book that we've already seen. It looked fascinating to me. I think I need to send a copy winging its way to Micah Cummins. Oh, good Lord, look at all this stuff. Okay, so this is also a February release. This is clearly Basic Books doing their bit to needle me in the ribs. I need to start paying more attention to February. Take that shelf in hand. Date everything, get everything ready for launch, all that sort of stuff. I've just been having so much fun with January books, reviewing a lot of January books, posting, being a very good boy and posting things on Goodreads, all that sort of stuff. But this is the finished copy of Anna Reid's book, A Nasty Little War, the Western intervention into the Russian Civil War. So this comes out in early February. By 1972, when delivering a message of friendship in Moscow, Richard Nixon stated that the United States had never been at war with Russia. This statement was untrue. It was a lie, of course, because you're mentioning Richard Nixon, who, until his time in office, lied more profitably and more reflexively and more mindlessly than anyone who had ever been in the Oval Office. Of course, that record has been completely eclipsed by the leading autocratic candidate for a fascist party in America who believes that Nikki Haley was in charge of Capitol security on January 6th. But before him, the record holder in all things, including disloyalty to America, was Richard Nixon. And it wasn't untrue, it was a lie. He was lying. He knew perfectly well. Anyway, since from 1918 to 1920, Americans, Britain, and France sent military expeditions to try to reverse the 1917 Russian Revolution. Joining in the vicious post-revolutionary Russian Civil War in theaters from Siberia to Ukraine, some 180,000 Allied troops from 16 different countries went to the aid of the white anti-Bolshevik armies, along with money, arms, medical, and food aid. Plenty of people died there. This book offers a comprehensive account of this conflict, revealing it as one of the most ambitious yet least talked about military ventures of the 20th century. Despite one clear win for the Allies, independence for the Latvians and Estonians, overall the effort ended in humiliating defeat. Allied soldiers hurrying back onto their trains and troop ships as the Red Army swept the board. Overlapping with and overshadowed by the First World War, the intervention is little remembered today, but the author argues that understanding this example of Western meddling is essential in interpreting both past and present, including the lead-up to the Second World War, Russia's new invasion of Ukraine, and the West's response to it. The West's response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine has been entirely to send encouragement and money and aid and materiel to Ukraine, which was a sovereign European country that was invaded by a land-hungry government to its east. The response of the West in every department has been vocal support and money. money, troops, material, anything that Ukraine needs, because of course you can't do that anymore. Of course you can't just invade a neighbor with tanks and start killing people in order to take their territory. No. We're all in contact with each other all the time now. We're all in instantaneous contact with each other. There are unions, economic compacts. You can't do that anymore, whether you're nuclear power or not. The only group of people anywhere in the West that don't strike that tone are Russian operatives in the American government. 2/3 of the House of Representatives in the American government are on the payroll of Russia. They want Russia to succeed, not because they're going to get anything out of it, but because they like autocratic dictatorships. They want Ukraine to fail. They want Ukrainians to die. It will please them personally. In addition to the money that they get, it will please them personally. But they're the only ones. Other than that, I don't know what. I'll have to see. I haven't read this yet. I'll have to see what the author thinks, where the author thinks the meddling is there. I'm sincerely hoping that she doesn't imply that those tanks and all that money is meddling. It's not meddling to save a sovereign country from being conquered by a ruthless dictatorship. Anyway, we'll see. I should know by now because I should have read this already, but I haven't. But I will. So this is a feast of history. We have a nasty little war, the intervention which this author capitalizes. Good for her. Then we have the Cleopatras by the author of the Persians. We have the Age of Revolutions, about the waves of revolutions that ushered in our current world. We have the Sentinel State, which is not by Basic Books, that's by Harvard, about exactly how the communist surveillance state in China works. How is it kept going? And finally, this thing, which is self-published, the Old Testament 12-Step Workbook, which gives you dedicated readings and then discussion prompts, which will work alone or in groups, and then plenty of room for you to write your own thoughts. If you are, for instance, working in your church's outreach group, maybe your church does a lot of work with recovering addicts of one kind or another. I want you to keep in mind this if your Christian church is doing that, this will still work. this will still work. It's still Scripture. So that is your mail haul for today. As I am losing the light, I feel like I'm groping in the dark here because the light is going away. Not just because it's sunset, but also because there's a storm a-coming. Not a big one, a tiny dinky little thing, rain probably. But I'll wrap this up for now, so that while you can still see me, I'll put on some lights to make a couple more videos. So I'll wrap this up for now, and I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.